Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 102 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, and to the second episode in our Yoga Studio business mini-series. Last week I shared what I learned as a yoga studio manager. You can scroll back in your podcast app or go to theconnectedyogateacher.com/101 for that episode. Today, let's talk about mission statements and core values. What does your yoga business stand for? Who are you serving, and what do you hope to achieve? When I learned about Steve Hart's unique space that combines yoga and music, I was immediately intrigued. But what was even more interesting was his ideas and thoughts around a mission statement and core values, and how that comes across in a studio's work and how they serve the community. I'm curious to know, Connected Yoga Teachers, have you thought of creating a mission statement or a list of your core values? Is that somewhere? Do you review it every quarter or every year? I think you're really going to connect with Steve's message in this episode of where he shares how his entire team talks about the core values and the mission statement every quarter, and they take a look at it. And Steve also shares that this really made the difference in his yoga business. So today we're going to definitely talk about mission statement, core values, but we also get into the time to have a class, prices for classes, memberships, and the business of running a successful yoga studio. And I want to share an update. Since my interview with Steve, he sent me a little note, and he wrote to me and said, on January 1st, we'll be taking over the operation of Happy You Yoga, a nearby yoga studio with deep roots in San Diego and a loyal community. Steve was talking about maybe purchasing a second space, and then he told me, yes, in fact, this did happen. So then he goes on to write, the deal came to be through a friendship that I established with the owner, who I saw as a colleague instead of the competition. We have never battled for students, but shared in our desire to spread yoga throughout San Diego. When it came time that he wanted to sell, I was his only phone call, and we worked out a deal right away. I attribute this to a belief in abundance over competition. It happened because I focused on what I was doing at my studio instead of competing with others. I love this. Thank you so much for sending this along, Steve, as an update. I know our listeners would really be interested and keen on hearing something like this, and that this is really one of my core values that we dig into. Let's work together as a community instead of being in competition with each other. So thank you so much for that. Before we get into the interview, I want to give a shout out to a couple of our listeners. One to Caroline, who sent me an email that I just love. She said it was a big thank you that she wanted to send along. She was studying the Yoga for Pelvic Health online course, and she said in her email to me, I'm loving it. I've listened to it on the train, in the kitchen, and out walking with my baby. I've been sharing little bits of it in my various pregnancy and postnatal classes, but most of all, I've enjoyed it in my body too. It's really helped me to feel connected with my body post-birth and to other yoga teachers. I'm also planning a workshop with my local women's health physio. I've completed the course multiple times and always enjoy going back to the videos and booklets. Thank you so much for sending this along, Caroline. As you know, Yoga for Pelvic Health is something that's really near and dear to my heart. Also, shout out to Greg from Canada, who left a review saying, hello, Shannon. I wanted to say thank you for making me feel like I have support as a yoga teacher. I'm still in the process of getting certified, but I've gone from a career in a major insurance company to pursuing my passion in yoga, and it's terrifying. Knowing that I'm not alone and having a community to turn to really helps calm my nerves. Thanks for all the work you and your team put into this podcast and the Facebook group. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much for sharing this, Greg. And yes, it is terrifying along the way. And I have to say that I still feel the fears, and I do it anyway, and I show up authentically. And hats off to you for sharing that in your review and for taking the time to do that. If you are new here, my name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant working for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you so that you have access to information and inspiration every single week, and that you feel this support as you navigate the jungles of yoga entrepreneurship. Before I introduce you to Steve, let's hear our hot tip of the week from Shannon at Schedulicity.
Hey Connected Yoga teachers, this is Shannon with a Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Our online waivers can help you save time, energy, space, and maybe even a few trees. It can be hard to remember who has and has not already signed your waiver, but it's one of the most important steps to take in protecting your business. Now that can all be done online when your student books their first class. If you prefer to book for your students or want to keep paper copies of their signatures, you can always keep track in their client profile as to whether or not they have acknowledged your waiver. Then, instead of searching through a stack of papers or filing cabinets, you can search for your client's name and know in one click if they still need to sign off. Nothing feels better than automated organization you can trust.
Thank you so much, Shayna, and thank you to the team at Schedulicity. Alrighty, let's dive in and meet Steve Hart. Steve is the founder of Riffs Studio, a unique music and yoga studio in San Diego, California. Riffs offers a full-service yoga program with beginner to advanced classes in vinyasa, yin, hatha, restorative, many kinds of yoga in their outdoor and indoor studios set to live music. Riffs was originally started in Utah by Steve's father, Larry, where the focus was on guitar retail, music lessons, and live performances. After the business took off, Steve decided to open a second branch in San Diego in 2012. This branch not only maintains their existing offerings, but also incorporates the healing powers of yoga in combination with live music performance. How amazing is that? We all know that the practice of yoga can have transformational effects on the lives of those who are practicing. Steve and his team of yoga and music instructors see it as their service to the world to provide an accessible space for those interested in making some positive life changes. Their mission, you're going to hear about that today, is to improve the health and happiness of every single person they interact with. And this underlies everything they do within the space and in their community. When Steve's not busy running his yoga studio, and as I said, now 2 yoga studios, he helps other yoga studio owners with their business. He teaches yoga, he facilitates sound baths, and he writes a blog on everything from yoga and spirituality to business and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Steve. It's great to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You had posted a comment and you had said, it was in an answer to a Facebook thread, and you had said in there, at the very foundation, we have a well-defined mission statement and core values that every single person we hire knows and aligns with. We don't focus on making money, but on providing value to our customers, and the money comes in as a result of that. We make decisions on maximizing value to our customers, not what is making the most money, losing the most money. Sometimes you have to lose money in certain areas, but trust that it will be a net positive value add to the company. That is the single best tip I can give. With that in place, everything else will fall in line with some organization. So this really got my curiosity because I like to look at mission statements, core values, business things. And that's when I reached out to you to be on the podcast. But for our listeners, can you back it up a little bit? Can you tell us where your yoga journey started? Do you remember your very first yoga class?
Yeah, wow. Well, my very, very first yoga class was actually in college for a PE credit. And it was my senior year, and I took it because I thought it'd be something easy that I could do to finish my PE credit that I needed to graduate. And I took the first class and realized how hard it actually was. I was an athlete, and so I was pretty tight. And my first impression of yoga was actually pretty negative. I didn't really like it all that much. But then years later, I came back into it through, I found a lady at the time. I was working at a guitar store that my father and I had opened, and a lady was expressed interest in trading private yoga sessions for private music lessons. And so I taught her how to play the guitar, and she taught me yoga. And that was the time that I really started to appreciate and enjoy what was happening. I got a little bit more personal attention, so I didn't feel quite as lost. And from there, it just grew. I eventually started going to a studio and fell more in love with it. At this point, it was still more of a physical practice for me. And then eventually I moved out to California, San Diego, where I live now, and opened up a yoga studio. And for a long time, I really didn't know what I was doing. It was kind of a fusion of music and yoga, which the music thing came from the store that I had with my father. And it wasn't until really 2014 that something happened where my mother suddenly passed away, and kind of rocked my world, as you can imagine. And then yoga was there for me. And that's when I really, really dove into the practice and started to find some of the benefits that were beyond just physical health and well-being. So I started learning how to breathe and how to meditate, and learning some of the principles of the practice and the philosophies. And that's where I would say my yoga path really started, was during that time. That's when I went and got my yoga teacher certification, and really learned what it meant to be running a business and providing this service for others. And I can honestly say it saved my life. I was in such a bad place before I moved into that I don't know what would have happened if I didn't find healing in the yoga practice. And so ever since then, it's been my goal, my mission to share that practice with other people, because I know how powerful it can be.
Wow. So you, correct me if I'm wrong, you had a music business first and you were a yoga student at that time. And then it was in 2014 when you became a yoga teacher. Is that right? Or there was yoga already in your studio?
There was yoga already. And it was more because I liked it, and I thought, and I needed some other way to keep the business going, because the brick and mortar retail music stores were not doing so well with all of the online stuff popping up, and Craigslist and eBay and Amazon and all that stuff. And so really it was just an added service at the time, but I didn't really know the product very well, and I didn't really know how to run a yoga studio very well. So it was there, but it was we didn't really have an identity at that time. It was kind of confusing and mishmashed until I went through that experience, at which point everything aligned in my mind, which then allowed me to align the business. And ever since then, things have gone much, much better.
And so what do you think shifted in that time when you were running the studio, but you were saying that it just wasn't really aligning? Was there something that you can think like, oh, I connected with this mentor, or I took this course, or my belief system changed, or my mindset changed? Can you pinpoint where that shift happened?
Yeah, well, there were a couple things. And I think overall, first and foremost, the most important thing was the fact that I fell in love with my product. I went from something that I was doing to that I kind of liked, but I was really doing it to make money to keep the business going. And then once this shift happened, I fell in love with yoga, and I saw the impact that it had in my life, and the impact it was having in others around me. And so I really, at that point, fully believed in what we were selling. And I think that was probably the most important thing. And I think once I found that, everything else began to fall in line. For example, I went to my yoga teacher training that next winter. So it was actually January of 2015. And I was one of two men in the training. And the other guy was about my age and was about to quit his career and join a friend of his to run a yoga studio. And he had a mother that was dealing with some sickness, and he wasn't really sure how long she was going to make it. And my mom had recently passed away, and so we really kind of bonded on that idea. And he became, and still is to this day, one of my best friends. And right when I got home from the training, I did an immersion training in Central America. And his partner, who had been running the studio, happened to be driving through San Diego where I lived, and she came by because through the recommendation of this guy from my training. And she sat down with me and basically laid it all out and said, "This is how you run a successful yoga business," and kind of gave me the idea of memberships and pricing and marketing and all these things that I had no idea, because at this point in time I was just totally trial and error trying to figure it out. And that was the first time I really opened my eyes to like, wow, there's a lot more to this than I thought. So we started making some changes right away, and things started picking up almost immediately. And ever since then, it's been fine tuning and adjusting and fine tuning and adjusting, and to get to where we are today, which is doing very well.
That's fantastic. I love how you said that you had this other business and it was sort of struggling. So the music side of things, and then you decided, okay, let's bring it along with yoga, because I feel like sometimes yoga teachers are looking at their own yoga business thinking, okay, this is struggling. What else could I add to this? So I think that our listeners will gain some insight there, that it's any business that can be feeling like that. And the fact that you brought in that it was really when you believed in your product, then it just started to click. And I think we see that so often if we are trying to sell something and we're not fully in for whatever reason, it's much harder to sell something. So that's huge. And then can you think back to what systems you had in place and what you shifted to that were the ones that had the biggest impact? Like maybe there's a couple of them.
You mean as far as what I did at the business to go from struggling to starting to get our feet, that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Probably the number one thing was memberships. At the time, we didn't have a membership model at the studio, and that was probably the best advice that this lady gave me, was to add memberships, and this is how you do it. So I figured out how to do the auto pay recurring memberships online, and then everything kind of trickled down from that we set our price at our membership, and then all of the prices that we set afterwards were geared towards encouraging people to become members, meaning the more committed you are to the studio, the less you're paying per class, which right away made a huge difference for us. And I would say that was probably the biggest, had the biggest impact, coupled with the actual sales process and how we brought someone in the door from their very first class, and how we converted them from that first class to eventually becoming a member. And we've had some of our members since that time, back in 2000, I guess early 2015, and they're still with us, a lot of them.
Right. The membership, how does it work then at your studio? If, say, I came and I was a brand new student, what would be the first thing that I would do then?
So we start with a new student deal, and this has changed a couple times over the last couple of years as far as what exactly this deal was. Currently, we have a full month of unlimited yoga for $49. Our drop-in is set at $20. So basically, we say, if you're local to San Diego, meaning there's a chance that you might become a member, you're eligible to buy this new student deal. And if you come 3 times over the course of the whole month, then you're saving money. And that's a pretty hard thing to turn down unless you're just traveling through or have no intention of ever coming back. So a majority of the people will actually sign up for that month of unlimited yoga. And then I have a sales staff, one lady in particular who will kind of be the concierge of this process and will ask the right questions, guide this person to the class that best suits their needs. If they're looking for physical fitness, then we have classes for that. If they're looking more for stress release and meditation, we have classes that are more geared towards that. So we can kind of guide them, especially people who have never practiced yoga before, and the names can be a little confusing. So we really help them. And then we check in with them over the course of that month. And then at the end of the month, we usually offer some sort of incentive to sign up for our membership. And if they do, then they receive this benefit and they get to practice yoga. And we have a variety of memberships as well. So we can cater to different people. The most dedicated, avid practitioners will buy an annual membership and they'll come all year long, and they'll get a really great rate per class. Then we have a monthly membership, which is just a monthly auto pay. And then we have a limited membership, which is 4 classes per month. So for the people who think they can only make it in once a week, we still have a membership for them. And people will start, I take that back. Some people will start there and then realize they want more of it because they feel so good, and they'll move up to their Hart membership, which is our regular monthly unlimited. And that's probably where most people stay, is in that monthly membership. And then we have the usual class packages and stuff like that. But by and large, most of our business is through our memberships.
And so how much is that monthly membership once they've done that first month?
It's $99.
Okay. Now, we used to have a membership model at one of the studios that I worked at, and we sat down and did some hard math at one point because we kept adding classes to the schedule. And it turned out that some of our students were only paying like $1 or $2 for a class. Mm-hmm. And our studio was limited size. So when we went to pay that teacher, we were actually paying the teacher more than we were making in some of those classes when we had some really dedicated students. Mm-hmm. Do you have a system in place so that you are actually making more income than you're spending for that?
I don't know if I would say we have a system in place. We've never really had that issue. So we pay our teachers generally a flat rate. I, for a long time, did a tiered system based on the number of students that were coming into that class, in hopes that teachers would market themselves and bring people in. And at the end of the day, I realized that that's not really the teacher's job. Their job is to teach a good yoga class and to be there for their students. My job is to bring people in the door as the yoga studio. So we did away with the flat rate, with the tiered rate system, and moved to a flat rate system. So that way, no matter how many students come to class, that teacher should be teaching their best possible class, and they'll be compensated the same if it's one person or if it's 30 people. So in that way, we can afford to have, it doesn't hurt us to have people coming in for just $1 a class, which never happens for us. I don't think we have any students that come enough that it would be $1 a class. But even the most avid, dedicated yogis that will come in, maybe it's $4 or $5 a class. And we're popular enough now that there's very rarely a class that we actually lose money on. And if there is, then usually we'll make a shift in the schedule before anything else is. My philosophy is that there's so many people around, and there's so many potential new students around, that at any point, at any given time during the day, there's enough students to make a class profitable. It's just my job to figure out what class to offer, and with what teacher. So sometimes if that's the case, we just end up switching the classes around.
This is really helpful. Thank you for getting into the details of it. Do you mind me asking how much your flat rate is for paying teachers?
It varies. It varies for pretty much every teacher, depending on a variety of factors. First and foremost, experience teaching yoga. So the newest teachers coming out of our yoga teacher trainings will start on the lower side, and the teachers that have been teaching for 10 plus years will be on the higher side. What we also do, which I think is really important, is we, and this is something that we just figured out probably about a year ago now, was how to systemize raises. What we found was teachers would randomly come in and ask for more money. And if we were doing well, and we liked the teacher, we'd say, okay, we'll give you some more money. And then other teachers who probably deserve more money, they just didn't ask because they didn't feel it was their place to ask. And so they stayed at a lower rate. And there wasn't really a lot of clarity as to how that worked, and we didn't really think it was fair. So we came up with a system to offer pay raises based on the qualities that we expect out of our yoga teachers. So a piece of that is attendance and retention, but another piece of that is professionalism, timeliness, a dedication to continued learning and growth, stuff like that. The qualities that we really look for in our teachers. And then when we evaluate you every so many classes, if we see that you're doing these things and you've been, a pleasure to work with and you're doing well in your classes, then you'll get a full raise or maybe a partial raise. And that way it eliminates any need for teachers to come and ask for more money. And it eliminates the teachers who might not want to do that. They still get their fair raise when the time has come for them.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. How many teachers are now working at your studio?
That is a great question. I want to say we're at about 15 or 16 right now.
Okay. And then do you know how many classes in an average week you have on the schedule?
We have 29 classes on the schedule at the moment.
Wow. So people can really find yoga when they're looking for it then, if they're near your studio.
Yeah, we are pretty full of classes. The only thing we don't really have are the early morning or the late in the evening classes, but most of the rest of the day we've got something going on.
Right. When you say early morning or late in the evening, can you define sort of what that time is?
We start at 9 a.m. and our last class is 7 p.m.
It starts at 7 and goes until...
9 a.m. is our earliest class, and 7 p.m. is our latest class. So we do a 9, 10:30, 3:30, 5:30, and 7 most days of the week.
That's helpful because I know that yoga teachers are often looking for what's that perfect time that people want to be at a class. Yeah. So I want to dig in and ask about this comment that you left on Facebook about having the very foundation you said was this well-defined mission statement and your core values. So where along the way did you decide to add this in, or was it right from the beginning?
It was not right from the beginning. It was, so there was a period of probably 2015 and all the way up until now, where I realized that trial and error was probably not the best way to grow my business. And so I went out and decided to study and to, read books and talk to people. And probably one of the most influential books in my life was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes.
Very famous one. And in that book, it talks a lot about the mission statement and how important it is to have a personal mission statement, and how building that foundation is imperative for any business. And so from there, that's when I sat down. I was like, okay, we need to define what this is. And so I started, and it was a long process, and it evolved. And then I kept reading. I read the Zappos Experience, which talks about Zappos, and that's all about core values and community culture. And I read Built from Scratch, which is about the founders of Home Depot, and that kind of came along those similar lines. I read a lot of stuff from Simon Sinek, talking about your purpose, your why for doing what you're doing, and all of those things. Really, there's an underlining idea amongst all of them is this purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that's defined in the mission statement and the core values that you set up for your company.
So then when you onboard new people, are you sharing that with them, or is it even before they apply, or is it on your website? Where is that mission statement and the core values?
Great question. So we have it hanging on the wall in my office, and I share it with all new hires. So we go and we sit down and I read the mission statement and I go through each core value and I explain what each one means. And then with my staff, meaning not necessarily my yoga teachers, but the staff that help me run the studio, we sit down every quarter and go over it again, which we actually did just yesterday for the beginning of the fourth quarter. And we review it, and we rotate each quarter. Someone new reads them and explains what each value means to them and how they see that in their job at the studio.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Does your staff like that, or do they feel kind of on the spot or uncomfortable with it?
I think they like it. I buy them all breakfast. So
that's nice.
So we go to a nice breakfast and it's fun, and we sit and chat and have fun for a while. And then once we're all done with food and everything, I'll pull out my computer and I'll give it to whoever it might be, and they'll read the mission statement and the core values, and we'll talk about it. And then from there, I ask each of them to pick 3 things that they would like to better improve in their, or better understand in their work at the studio for that quarter. And then we'll review the 3 things they picked from the previous quarter and see how they did. And if they chose something last quarter, and if they did a great job, we'll talk about that. Or if it kind of fell by the wayside, we'll talk about that. And so each quarter there's always things to focus on for each individual. And then from there, we talk about usually 1 or 2 big ticket items at the studio, like projects that we want to work on, or if we want to do a shift that's rather large, we'll talk about the pros and cons of it, kind of a company discussion about something, so we can get the opinions of everyone involved.
Right.
And I think they like it. I think they generally have a good time. I enjoy it, and I haven't heard any complaints. So
we'll tell them if you have some feedback, then anyone can share. They can leave a comment in the show notes. I'm curious, how many people are working on your team that aren't yoga teachers then?
So my team is comprised of 4 people as of right now. They all happen to be yoga teachers at the studio. They haven't always been yoga teachers. I've had some people that weren't certified or didn't teach. But the current staff that I have in place, they all are certified and they all do teach at the studio, which is actually really nice to have. But currently I have 1 person that's focused on marketing and sales, 1 person that's focused on operations and retail and stuff like that. 1 person that is new that we just brought on is taking some front desk shifts and helping out in different places here and there. And then 1 person that is the head of our yoga program, who basically deals with the schedule and our programming, like yoga teacher trainings and workshops and stuff like that.
Nice. And so how does that compare to when you first opened? Was it just you running the show there? And like, think back to when you first added yoga in.
Yeah. So it was just me running the business, and then I had 1 person on as my basically yoga program manager. But at the time it was, I don't know much about yoga. Do your thing, make it work.
Right.
And it didn't work because I gave very little direction. I didn't really have any direction to give, and it didn't work. And so once I went through my process, then I actually took over the program myself for some time. And then once we were ready to bring someone in to run the program again, at that point, I did have a vision and a direction and a mission at which I wanted our staff to align with.
Wow. Okay. That's really helpful to see. And it's also really nice to hear from you that like where you started from and where that moved from, I guess, in this, just telling someone, okay, run it. Like, now you know about yoga. I don't really know you do it, and how that didn't really jive. So it's really helpful to hear that. And so coming back to the mission statement and the core values, would you mind sharing them with us?
Sure. I'll read them all off to you. So our mission statement is, it is our mission to provide a means for enhanced health and happiness to each individual in a welcoming space that facilitates growth and evolution of consciousness through the practice of yoga and music. Our core values are as follows: service beyond expectation, community of good vibes, space for growth of all stakeholders, investing in relationships, and value focused.
Wow, I love them. They're so good. And you said that it took a while and that you edited them. And do you still continue to go back and edit when you revisit them?
Yeah, I haven't as much recently because we've been pretty dialed in and have felt really good about them. But I did mention to my staff yesterday, and will continue to mention, that at any point in time, if the company shifts, then so will these qualities. And so if at any point in time anyone feels that these no longer define what we're doing, to bring it up and we can talk. And they're not set in stone. They're always open to change if we change.
Right. I admire so many things that you're talking about here, and a huge one is that you went and did some research. And it's not like you decided to sign up for, a business degree. You did something that you could do in the moment of being a studio owner, and you researched through books. And I think that's fantastic that you also didn't just look in the yoga world, because sometimes it's not our strongest. I don't know many books written on the business of yoga. What have been some of the key things that you've learned along the way that it would have been a lot easier if you would have known early on?
That's a great question. A lot of things. This mission statement, core values, probably first and foremost above anything else, I think is the hands down most important thing that needs to be defined sooner rather than later in any company. Probably the second thing that I learned was that providing a good service doesn't really matter if you don't have good marketing. For a long time, I thought marketing was a waste of time and money, and that if we did a good job, people would just talk to each other and they would come in, and that's just not the way it works. At least not in this business and in this city where there's yoga studios on every other block.
Right.
So having good marketing that shares your message, I think, was definitely really important. And then I would say using the resources that you have around you and available, and to not try and do everything yourself. So hiring people, asking people's opinions, consulting resources like books, and there's so much stuff online, listening to podcasts, all that sort of stuff, just saves a ton of time than making mistakes, than having to pay for it.
Right.
Which is what I did for most of our first few years here.
Right. Those are good. Those are really great. It sounds like in the second one that you said, so the first one was doing the mission statement, the core values. And the second one, did I hear you right in that it was good marketing, but also great service, like providing a great service?
Yes. I mean, providing a great service, I guess, is more important than good marketing, but providing a good service without good marketing won't get you very far. Right. In my business where I currently reside, which is what we were doing, I think, for a while. We had a really good service going on. We had great teachers and a beautiful space and a good neighborhood and all that, but people just didn't know who we are because we didn't have very good marketing. And once we really tapped into the marketing side of things, that's when people are like, oh, this place is really cool, I'm going to come and check it out. And then once they're in the door, then we can do our thing, and we can provide them with the great service, and that will keep them coming back.
So what do you think, if yoga teachers are like, okay, I want to start with marketing, where would you suggest that they really look at investing? What is the marketing that has been the most helpful for your studio?
That's a great question. And I think I don't have a single answer. For our studio, probably some of our best efforts have been social media. Um, Instagram and Facebook are the two that we've focused on. Um, we've done a fair amount in email marketing that has been fairly successful. And then I think really probably the most successful thing that we've done, which kind of borders the line of marketing and sales, is having our salesperson reach out personally to check in with people. That's once they've already come in the door for the first time. But for a long time, we would spend so much effort getting them to walk in the door for the first time, and that was our marketing. But then we didn't have any systems in place to follow up with that person. So that's kind of why we blend sales and marketing together, because it's not just their first time, it's how do we get them to come back and then back again and then commit and then stay with us, and how can we incentivize that? So I would say, as far as the actual bottom line for the business is concerned, that would probably be the most important piece. So from a yoga teacher perspective, I think the most important thing you can do is connect with the students that you have first and foremost. And then each new student that comes in the door, make sure that you give them such a good service that they're going to want to come back. Now, I recognize that not every student is going to love you. That's something I had to learn early on as a teacher. But if over time you're able to teach for people, and you really work hard on providing a good class and connecting with people and helping them grow in their practice, they're going to come back to you. It's how it works. And I think if you want to grow your classes, that's going to be way more successful than Instagram.
Right. Oh, this is good. This is good that it's social media, email, but then this other piece that maybe we're not even thinking about, and that's reaching back out. I know that one studio that I was working with, it was when we printed off the report of like who was coming to class, there were so many people that were just coming once and then not returning. And it was key to be checking in with these people and saying like, hey, we saw that you came to one class and then you didn't come back. Can you give us feedback on that? Or like you said, reaching out and then just letting them know, how was that class? And here are some other classes you might like to try out. That's great. And then the third thing of asking for help, not always easy as a business owner to say like, I don't know this, or I need help with this. But you listed some great resources, the books, podcasts, just saying like, hey, can you help out? Yeah.
I think on that note, surrounding yourself with different people, I think is really, really important. Different types of people. Being a male, my specialty was not in design or looks or creativity. And our studio reflected that early on. And now I think we have one of the most beautiful studios around, because I was able to find people and bring them in that could do that had that eye, that was able to beautify the studio and say, hey, we need a check-in desk that looks better than this, so that when people walk in the door, it doesn't look, haphazard. It looks nice. And once she said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. Let's do it. But it just never really occurred to me that was a necessary expense that we had to do until someone came in and said it. And that's just one example of many, where bringing in different people with different areas of expertise was really important. It's not just getting someone and telling them to do something. It's getting someone and asking their opinions. And we have regular meetings, and I allow all of my staff members to have a voice and say, what do you think about this? Because, I don't know everything. I know some things, but I want to, a group of 5 people are going to be able to answer a lot more questions than just me by myself. So I think that was a big thing. And, as a business owner, checking my ego and saying, maybe these people will have better ideas than me, and we should try some of them. And it works. So I think that was a big piece of it as well.
Right. Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing all of those. Did I see on your website that you also work with yoga studios or yoga teachers in a consultant role?
I do, yes. I work with yoga studio owners just to help them do the same thing that I've done. I believe that aligns with my mission, which is to provide the practice of yoga in an accessible way to as many people as possible, because especially in today's climate, we could use it. And I know there are a lot of people out there struggling with different issues. And if I can help other yoga studio owners to do better on their on the business side, so that they can provide a good quality of yoga instruction to their students, that's something that I'm very interested in, and I have been doing for probably about a year and a half now.
Nice. So if there are yoga teachers out there and either they own a studio or they want to start a studio, where can they find you to work with you?
The best way would probably be to email me. My email is Steve, Steve, at riffstudios.com, spelled RIF as in Frank, F as in Frank, S as in Sam, studios, STUDIOS.com. And from there, I can give all the details and how it all works. But that's probably the best way to reach out if that's something you're interested in.
Awesome. I will make sure that we put your email in the show notes, and you'll have to tell me if it's like, okay, Shannon, take it out of there. Somebody else. Thank you so much for your time today. If there is a yoga teacher out there who's struggling to market their yoga, what would you say to them?
Focus on teaching great classes and connecting to people.
That's good. I like it. It's super simple.
And I just want to add to that piece, because I did talk earlier about how having great service without great marketing is not the best thing for the business. That's very different than being a yoga teacher. Being a teacher, I think you focus on teaching. Being a yoga studio, that's when I think the marketing becomes a really important thing. Once you take your teaching into a bigger yoga brand where you don't necessarily teach at a studio and you're doing things completely independently, that's when you have to find a mixture of both.
Yeah. Not always the easiest thing.
It's not. And it's hard, and it's super competitive. And I think authenticity is probably the number one thing. Be yourself. Don't copy what other people are doing, and people can connect to authenticity.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all of this wisdom today. I'm excited to hear from our yoga teachers who maybe have questions, and they can post in the show notes and connect with you. And I'll definitely put a link to your website as well, so people can check out what it looks like. And maybe if they're around San Diego, they might even stop in and see you.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, connected yoga teachers, how was that? What an amazing interview. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom, Steve, and for answering my questions about the nitty-gritty details of owning a studio. I want to hear from you, connected yoga teachers. What do you think that you could use from today's talk with Steve in your own yoga business? Maybe you're a studio owner, or maybe you are an individual yoga teacher. I'm curious if you are thinking about doing a mission statement if you don't have one already, or if you're thinking about listing out your core values. Back in episode 97, I talked with Susan Hopkinson in our on-air consultation call about listing out 15 I believe statements. And I think this can be really connected to those core values. So think of the things that are 15 of your individual I believe statements that not everyone would agree with, but that you really stand for. I think that's a great way to get into your core values. One key takeaway that I really took from this interview with Steve was when he talked about how his team sits down and chooses 3 things, and they each share 3 things that they want to better understand or improve on, and that they do that each and every quarter. What would it be like if you took yourself out for breakfast, or you hired a business coach, or you got together with a friend, or you sat down with your journal and you wrote down or discussed 3 things you would like to improve or better understand in your yoga business? This is what I really am excited to sit with for the first quarter, for this first part of the year, and then continue on with that. I feel like when we pick too many things, it's too much. and then to revisit and come back to it, I think is really key as well. Another key takeaway that I have was when Steve talked about his team, that he has a person in charge of marketing and sales. He has another person in charge of retail and operations, another person just hired on for admin, and the fourth person, a yoga program manager who's in charge of the schedule and the yoga teacher training, that planning. The reason why this is a key takeaway for me, and the reason why I really want to highlight and share this with you, is that sometimes we are the one person on the team and we are doing all of the things. So this might be you. You might be in charge of all of this. So what would it look like if you set up the time and you block the time where you say, okay, today is the day when I market my yoga business. Now I'm the marketing and sales person. And tomorrow is the time when I'm admin, so I'm doing some accounting and answering emails. And now today I'm the yoga program manager, so I'm in charge of the schedule and planning out on the calendar. How would that make your life a little bit easier as a yoga teacher? And also notice which ones you are not attached to doing, which ones eventually you'd like to pass off and get someone else doing. And don't forget that you can check out all of today's show notes at theconnectedyogateacher.com/102. I've made sure to include a list of the books that Steve suggested and that he used to build his own business knowledge in the show notes. Again, that's theconnectedyogateacher.com/102. If you would like to meet up in person, I want to tell you about a few places that I'm going to be. One in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Schedulicity is sponsoring a gathering for us connected yoga teachers. It's at the same time as the Toronto Yoga Show, and it's a private gathering, and you are welcome to attend. It's happening Friday, March 29th, and you will find out more about this on our website, in our Facebook group, and I will be sending out an email with more information as well. So if you are going to the Toronto Yoga Show, I would love to interview you, to meet up with you in person, face-to-face, and ask you what your key takeaways are at the yoga show. I'll be there March 28th to the 31st, so make sure to reach out to me and we can connect. I'm also going to be sharing prenatal yoga teacher training in Bermuda in Meaford in April of 2019, and Yoga for Pelvic Health in Meaford, Ontario in November of 2019. So you can find out all of the details on theconnectedyogateacher.com under training and events. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and to meet up today. It's been super fun. Thank you to our team, Samantha, Suzanne, and Crunch. They, along with you, make this episode possible. Okay, connected yoga teachers, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can really show up and share the yoga that lights you up?